By beating up Bartolomeo, Shanks will enable the Navy to catch him. He will unintentionally trigger a second Marineford war, because Akainu will successfully use Barto to lure Luffy out. Shanks tried to prevent the first Marineford war by asking Whitebeard to call Ace back. His plea was ignored. Ace was captured. Whitebeard went to war. When the two were dead, Shanks appeared and stopped the war. Ironically, he is now on his way to start Marineford 2.0. Akainu is the next big enemy. His recent speech about driving all his enemies back into the sea makes it clear. It reminded me of Kaido declaring he's going to start the greatest war, just when he was about to be targeted next by the Straw Hats. Both Kaido and Big Mom were defeated when they were hit into magma, into the element that Akainu can control. Most people believe Blackbeard will be the next major foe. Luffy wants to go to Laugh Tale now. Blackbeard is his main rival when it comes to attaining the One Piece. Teach also just kidnapped Kobe. Problem is, Blackbeard still has stuff to do before his showdown with Luffy can happen. He hasn't reached his full potential yet, still hasn't gotten a third Devil Fruit. He also hasn't defeated Shanks yet. That fight will certainly happen before the one with Luffy. Oda actually stated in SBS 97 that after the Straw Hats leave Wano, big developments on a global scale would be set in motion that would start the biggest battle ever. The biggest battle ever can only be a battle against the largest force in the One Piece world, the Navy. How will those big developments be set in motion? In the past I assumed Zabu's capture would be the trigger, but then we found out that he wasn't captured. I mindlessly switched to Hancock, but she also wasn't taken into custody by the Marines. But now I'm certain that I have figured out the person whose capture will trigger the clash between Luffy and Fleet Admiral Sakazuki. Bartolomeo the Cannibal, a captain of Luffy's Grand Fleet. Ace's capture triggered the first Marineford war. He was leader of Whitebeard's 2nd Division. Barto is the captain of the Grand Fleet's 2nd ship. Barto is obsessed with Luffy, just like Ace was. Barto constantly tells other people about Luffy, just like Ace did. Barto's Luffy obsession started when he witnessed him almost getting executed by Buggy at Logue Town. Soon the roles will be reversed. Luffy will have to watch Barto kneeling on the scaffold. Barto is called Cannibal not because he eats human flesh, but because he messes with other people. Normally he gets away with his rude behavior. He has a powerful devil fruit that shields him from consequences. But it won't work this time. One of the strongest characters in the series is on his way to teach him a lesson, and he is bringing his whole crew with him. In a cover story, we saw Bartolomeo arriving at an island under the protection of red-haired Shanks. Barto stabbed someone, burned the red-haired pirate's flag, and declared it Luffy's territory. When Shanks was close to Wano, Lucky Roo reminded his captain of that. Shanks agreed that he has to do something about it, because the trust people put in him is at stake. So they are on their way to Barto right now. Barto has no chance against the red-haired pirates. Many people still believe Shanks will just laugh it off, maybe scare Barto a little, scold Luffy later, but no serious reaction. We saw in chapter 1 that he can laugh off minor personal attacks. A mountain bandit poured sake over his head and he let it slide. But later, when the mountain bandit kidnapped Luffy, Shanks became serious. He told Higuma that he would never forgive someone who hurt his friends. What Barto did is more akin to kidnapping Luffy than to the sake spilling. The citizens of islands under Shanks' protection are presumably friends that he wants to keep safe. He gives people his flag because pirates fear him and will therefore treat those people well. What protects them is his name, his reputation. If someone like Barto can just burn his flag and get away with it, then his name doesn't mean anything anymore. Then no one under his protection is truly protected. Shanks wouldn't be where he now is. He wouldn't be an emperor if he ignored such behavior. Shanks will do something to Barto that will cause Marineford 2.0. We know that this conflict will cause something big because of what the narrator in chapter 800 told us. When the Grand Fleet was formed, he stated that the members would each grow in power until they eventually cause a great incident of historic proportions. Apart from Barto, the captains of the Grand Fleet haven't done much of significance. Only other captain who created a big conflict is Hedrudin. He was put on a deserter list for leaving Buggy's delivery service. An argument with Buggy is not and will not develop into an incident of historic proportions. Therefore, Barto will cause the great incident that the narrator was talking about. I don't believe that Shanks will give Barto to the Marines, but he might beat him to the brink of death and thus make it easy for the Navy to pick him up later. He defeats Barto, sails away, and then a Navy officer arrives at the island and stumbles upon the defenseless Barto Club. Perhaps even Ryukugyu, or the ship that he called when he planned to arrest Luffy. They should still be nearby. Then Akainu can schedule a public execution to lure Luffy out. Shanks wouldn't even know what he has done until he reads it in the newspaper. Barto himself is not that important, but he is linked to Luffy, who is now one of the 4 emperors. Barto's ship even has a big Luffy imitation at the front, and he sticks Luffy's flag into already claimed islands, so his relationship to Luffy is not a secret, but it is one-sided. Luffy had no interest in the Grand Fleet, but they formed it anyway. They swore to protect Luffy, even though Luffy didn't promise anything in return. Now Luffy will have to make a choice. We know what kind of person he is. Of course he will decide to save Bartolomeo. He will go to New Marineford for that. When the Grand Fleet captains attempted to create a formal bond between them and Luffy, they offered him a sake cup. Becoming family by exchanging sake cups is called Sakazuki, exactly like the actual name of Akainu. Admiral Sakazuki killed Ace, who became Luffy's brother through the Sakazuki ceremony. When Sakazuki is defeated and Barto is freed, Luffy will finally drink a sake cup in front of his captains to complete the Sakazuki ritual, making Barto and the others part of his family. This time he will have saved his family from the Navy. This will redeem him from not having saved Ace. Wouldn't it be lame to repeat Marineford? It wouldn't, because Marineford was not what it could have been. Even though it was the biggest battle we had seen thus far, in retrospect it doesn't look impressive anymore. A dying emperor, Whitebeard, went up against an old washed up fleet admiral, Sengoku. The revolutionaries broke out of Impel Down because they believed Ace was Luffy's blood brother, and thus also the son of Dragon. But Dragon didn't show up to rescue his supposed son, so Ivankov was the strongest of the revolutionaries fighting against the Marines. The Navy had the support of Vegapunk's Pacifista, who were impressive against rookies on Sabaody, but couldn't do much against relevant players. Now we will get a young healthy emperor, Luffy, going up against a fleet admiral in his prime, Akainu. Dragon will actually show up. The revolutionaries just declared war against the celestial dragons, and their commanders fought admirals. Vegapunk's new invention is way superior to the original Pacifista. The Seraphim can even make top tiers sweat. One big indication for Oda going to repeat Marineford is that Oda is already repeating the prelude to the original Marineford. Not exactly repeating, but there are big similarities. Before Marineford, the warlords were summoned to fight Whitebeard. Now the Navy wants them again, arrested. The only 2 who were already in custody of the government when the warlords were abolished, Kuma and Doffy, were also the first to arrive at the meeting in Marijoa, where Lafitte nominated Blackbeard for warlord. Lafitte had infiltrated Marijoa unnoticed. Sabo and some other revolutionaries did that also recently. They snuck into the holy place, not to offer a new warlord, but rather to take a former warlord away from the government. Shanks also recently visited the 5 Elders. Before the Marineford War, he met another enemy of his to have a talk, Whitebeard. He wanted to talk about a certain pirate with the 5 Elders. With Whitebeard he talked about Blackbeard. Before Whitebeard attacked the Navy HQ, Shanks clashed with Kaido, who wanted to attack Whitebeard. Now the fight between Shanks and Blackbeard is looming. Perhaps Blackbeard tries to attack Luffy, but Shanks takes him on so Luffy can safely sail to free Barto. So before Marineford 2.0, Shanks will clash with an emperor again. Lastly, Luffy had a bounty of 300 million when he arrived at Marineford. Now he has 3 billion, not a coincidence. I expect Akainu to lose his position for losing this war. Fujitora will succeed him and become the next fleet admiral, but the world government won't be finished.